everything is happening over the internet. I think we all know that internet has changed our life, right? The way we work, the way we communicate, everything has changed. So the question is, what what is the next wave of internet? Because as people, we are already connected. What is the next wave? So they say that the next wave of internet is about something called as things getting connected together. So things getting connected together, all the intelligent objects getting connected together, smart objects getting connected together. So there lies the issue. Now, looking at this, so a lot of people, so if you look at this cartoon, it says that, did you know the S in IoT is for security? But as a user or as a developer, for me, I say that there is no S in IoT. Where did this S come from? So that is where the point of contention today. That is why we are sitting here to discuss on the security component of IoT today. So we all say that S is for security in IoT, but a lot of people don't know that there is something called S in IoT. So that is where we have to sit today, discuss and point out where we can put up the security in IoT, how we should be aware of these IoT devices. So the thing is, if you look at the next point of motivation for us to sit today is, lot of IoT devices are coming up into the market. Am I right? I think it can be a lot of foreign devices are coming up, Chinese devices are coming up, a lot of different countries are popping up with the device. But the problem is that S component is not coming up into the IoT device. That's where the question rises for us. If you look at, there are a lot of attacks which has happened on IoT devices, knowingly or unknowingly. A lot of malwares were implemented on the IoT devices. But the thing is, up till 2016, we never knew that there is something called a malware in IoT device basically. Lot of malware. The malware, which is called as Mirai, when it has attacked around 1.4 million cameras, that day we understood that there is IoT devices have become the target today. So keeping that in mind, and apart from that, we know that every smart home today, I think we all are planning for smart homes in our cities basically. So they say that an average number of devices per person today is having around 8 devices per person as per Cisco statistics. So we may be having a tab, we may be having a wearable, we may be having a smartwatch, fitness trackers, smart TV, smart speakers, and so that is what the point of contention today is. We need to discuss about IoT security, and we need to have awareness when using these IoT security devices. So keeping this in mind, let me, my agenda for today's presentation would be that, let me start off with why. I think we have already started with why we are sitting here today to discuss on something called IoT security and its practices. Then we'll be discussing about what component. What I wanted to give you, I think a lot of multidisciplinary people are sitting today for the session. So let me give you a brief introduction on IoT and then get into IoT security. Then who are the end users basically? Who are the beneficiaries? We all are the beneficiaries because all of us are knowingly and unknowingly using IoT devices today in our homes, in our offices, everywhere we go. So we'll be discussing about that. And the final component will be, how is the component, how we are going to protect our device and protect ourselves from this targets or threats which are coming up on IoT devices. So all these things we'll be discussing in this 1 hour session. So just um, let me start off with this component. So let me start off with what exactly is IoT. So for that, I just wanted to give you a glimpse on how did from the internet it has moved to Internet of Things. So for that, let me talk about the first component, which is called as the computing paradigms. When I talk about the computing paradigms, I think we have already seen there are three types of or three waves of computing basically. When I talk about, there is something called as the first wave of computing, there's something called as second wave of computing, and currently we say that we are in the third wave of computing. So when we looked at the first wave of computing, I think it was an age-old computing when the computing started. I think we all talked about something called as IBM mainframes and all. There used to be a big, huge server. A lot of people, a lot of scientists used to get connected to that for computing capabilities, basically. So that was the first wave of computing, which we call it as a mainframe computing, which was one to many. But what happened to the second wave of computing? Second wave of computing, I think we all might have seen that, which is called as a personal computing. All right, one-to-one computing. We have a PC before us. We talk to the PC for computing and all those things. That was the second wave of computing. Did we stay back there in the second wave of computing? No. We have moved to the third wave of computing, which is called as the ubiquitous computing. Basically, ubiquitous computing is nothing but many devices connecting to one person. That is what I was saying. Today, on an average, if you look at, there are 6 to 8 devices per person today. So all these devices are controlling that person, am I right? So that is what, where we are in the era of ubiquitous computing, which is leading to something called Internet of Things. So the currently what we say is everything has to get connected to internet. So that is the era where we are in. So moving towards that, if you look at the internet evolution as a whole, internet evolution, the thing is what they say is when internet started in somewhere around 1970s, I remember, we had the project called as ARPANET. DARPANET and all started, where the protocols like TCP, IP and all come up, which has led to internet. Am I right? So that time, when the year from 1969 to 1995, it was called as something called as Internet of Boffins, where a lot of scientists used to use internet for their experimentation purpose. But later on, the internet has moved to something called as Internet of Geeks, which is from 1995 to 2000. A lot of gadget lovers and all used to use internet. But slowly, the internet, with its era, it has moved to something called as Internet of Masses, where it has gone to the masses through some internet cafes. I think you all remember that we used to go to internet cafes, go there for chatting, sending mails, and so. But that has moved to something called as mobile internet. I think we all are enjoying that mobile internet today also, where a lot of people who are listening to my session might be on their mobile streaming my session basically. Am I right? So that was the era from 2010 to 2020. But internet didn't stop there. It has moved to something called as Internet of Things, where they're planning that all the things should get connected to internet. So now that raises the question that so many devices are getting connected to internet. Now, where is the security component of it? Are we aware of there is something called security into that? So that is what we need to discuss today. Okay. So keeping that in mind, if you look at the question comes is, sir, you're talking about IoT is the rising and all. There's a lot of growth in IoT. How big is IoT? Today, if you look at how big is IoT, I would say that if you look at the number of websites, there are around 1 billion which are coming up by 2025. There will be around 5 to 6 billion people as a population, but they say that 50 billion devices are going to get connected. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that 50 billion devices getting connected together? So how much worry should be there for us? Because are we prepared with the infrastructure? When the infrastructure is there, are we prepared for the security component of it? So that raises the question for us for our session today, basically. So that is what, because there are a lot of things which got hacked today in the market. Because they know that IoT is the next big market which is going to come. Already hackers are ready to hack the things. Hackers are ready to hack your home. Hackers are ready to hack your office. Hackers are ready to hack anything possible for them. So that is what we need to discuss today, how to protect that. Okay. So if you look at keeping that in mind, the first question arises is what exactly is IoT? When did it start and how is it growing basically? Because as it has become the trending and buzzing, we should understand the component of IoT basically, which is called as Internet of Things. So when I call it as Internet of Things, a lot of people ask, so how did the name come? Because the father of generally IoT, we call him as Kevin Ashton. Basically, he was the I would say that he was the head of Auto ID Labs in the University of Massachusetts, where he was given a problem statement. So generally, we all know that need is the right mother of invention basically. Or so when need is there, so the need which has come to Kevin Ashton was they asked him that, sir, Procter and Gamble came to him and asked that we have a problem. So what is the problem is we have so many products, am I right? You and me use a lot of PNG products daily in the month. So they have asked him that we are having a problem that we are not able to track these products basically. So they came out with, can we come out with a component which can track our products in the warehouse? Then he said, why don't you put up something called RFID? So I think RFID we have seen everywhere, fast tag and all today. It has coming up into the market very much today. So in 1999 itself, he has announced that RFID can be used to each and every product. It can be tracked. The data can be sent to the server. Then he has analyzed that, okay, these are all things, am I right? They're connected over the internet. Why can't I call it as Internet of Things? So that is how the name of Internet of Things came up. So that was the introduction of IoT, which has come up basically. So keeping that in mind, so how do you define IoT today? So because a lot of people ask, sir, I have IoT wearable. IoT wearable. If I protect IoT wearable, it's good enough. I would say that it's not good enough because IoT is a combination of various components. So what are the components that make an IoT that we should understand so that we can protect our IoT? So the thing is, if you look at what are the components that make an IoT is, if you look at it, there are three components that make an IoT. So I would say that the first component which makes an IoT is the sensors, because sensors are very much important. So that makes an IoT basically because they are the one which are giving the input. For example, you take up your wearable device, which is an IoT device. It gives you a lot of input. Am I right? For example, it gives you the input of how many calories you have burnt. It gives you the input of what is your heart rate. Am I right? Or so many sensors are put up on your IoT device. Then comes the connectivity. The connectivity is how it is getting connected to your mobile phone or how it is getting connected to the cloud. And finally, it will be the people in the process. So where it is getting processed and where it is given to the stakeholders. So all these components make an IoT device today. So the thing is, a lot of people ask me, sir, where to protect IoT? I would say that you have to protect everywhere. Then only I would say that it's a complete secured IoT device. I can't say that I'll protect the sensors. I'll protect the hardware. Someone says I'll protect the connectivity. Someone says that I'll protect the cloud. It is not true, because you have to protect all the components. Then only I would say that you'll be able to protect your IoT device basically. So that is where the problem comes. So that is what we have to discuss today. Okay. So the thing is, keeping that in mind, as I clearly told you that sensors are the input. You may ask me what are sensors. Sensors can be anything depending on your application. For example, I want to know the temperature of this room. I'll put up a temperature sensor. I want to know the humidity of this room. I'll put up a humidity sensor. I want to know the visuals. I'll put up a camera in your office, camera in your house. Like that, sensors can be giving the input basically. So once sensors are done, then I would say that there is something called connectivity. How do you connect the data to your server? Because the purpose of IoT today is everything has to get connected to internet. Why a thing has to get connected to internet? To give you the data. So when you want to give the data, how do you send the data? Through some connectivity, a wireless communication protocol. So when I say it's a wireless communication protocol, the thing is which connectivity you want to use. For example, generally people say that I'm inside this room, I'll use Bluetooth. I'm outside the room, I use Wi-Fi. If I'm everywhere, I use 4G, 5G, which is coming up into the market. So depending on your need, you put up the connectivity. So the third component comes the people in the process. When the third component comes the people in the process, what happens is finally the data has to come to the cloud. On the cloud, it has to get processed, and finally the data has to be sent to the stakeholders depending on the need basically. For example, cameras I put up in the city. So they're all different IoT devices basically which are put up in the city. Why you need that? You want surveillance basically. Who are the end users? Police are the end users. If the same cameras are put up in your house, you are the end users. Am I right? So these are some of the things which make up an IoT device basically. So when these are the some of the things which make up an IoT device, if you look at the complete ecosystem of IoT device. So the reason why I'm telling all this is, you may be asking, sir, you're talking about IoT. We were supposed to listen about IoT security. Why this IoT ecosystem and all? Because why I'm telling you that is, the reason behind this background for this IoT security session is because all these components are very much important for having security in each and everything. I can't say that security is in the end device. I can't say that security is in the gateway. I can't say that security is in the cloud. I should say that security is everywhere. Security should be everywhere. So that is the reason the complete, when I say IoT is secure, means the complete ecosystem of IoT is secured. That means your end devices are secured, the data passing on the gateway should be secured, the communication should be secured, and even the mobile application should be secured, and even the cloud should be secured. Then only I can say that it's completely secured basically. So that is the reason, keeping that in mind, I think let us look at some applications of IoT so that we understand where IoT, I think Mr. Chandrakant has raised a hand. Yeah, I think shall we answer the questions after the session? That would be better, I think. Okay, Chandrakant, I think I'll answer all the questions once they are done. Okay, sure. So the thing is, let us talk about some of the applications so that we lead to how IoT applications are getting targeted basically. So when I talk about some of the applications, so the first application I would talk about is the applications which are put up on our body, because they are very important. If they are hacked, that means we ourselves are hacked basically. So what do you mean by IoT for our body? When I say IoT for my body, I say that there are some sensors which are put up so that that data is going to some either your mobile phone for processing or some cloud for processing basically. So that is where the data is going. I think Parimal Das, I'll be answering the questions once the session is done. That will be better, I feel. At the end, we can answer all the questions. Okay. Yeah. So the thing is, if we look at that component, so the first example I would talk about an IoT device is a MIMO device, a small device, which is put up on the body of the baby basically. So you may be asking, sir, why this IoT device is important? So this IoT device, I would say that this is preventing something called as SIDS basically, sudden infant death syndrome. So when it's called a sudden infant death syndrome, the thing is, they say that the problem statement behind this is basically the infants who are in the age of 0 to 6 months are dying, passing away due to some conditions, basically not able to monitor some conditions. So doctors have come out with a solution that if a baby is monitored in real time about the baby's breathing, skin temperature, body position, and activity level, if all these parameters are monitored in real time, we'll be able to prevent SIDS. We'll be able to prevent SIDS. We will not be able to cure SIDS. We'll be able to prevent SIDS. So keeping that in mind, MIMO has come out with a device, a small device, which is called as a wearable IoT device, which is put up on the body of the babies. So what it does is it does all the parameters which doctors have defined, like baby's breathing, skin temperature, body position, activity level, and so on. So when the data is through some connectivity, it is passed on to the mobile phone of the mother basically, or the caretaker. So what exactly happens is, when a baby wakes up, it will immediately intimate the mother that the baby woke up, please go and feed him. If a baby is not moving from a long time, it will intimate the mother that baby is not moving, there is some issue. Go and take him to a doctor. The temperature is very high, it will be intimating on the mobile phone. So these are some of the devices, very important devices which are put up on the body. So why I'm discussing all this is, if these IoT devices which we are using extensively are getting hacked, then it's a trouble for lot of people and a lot of stakeholders basically. So that is what we need to discuss. So the thing is, let me get into one more example. Let's get into our house today. So the thing is, a lot of people ask, why do we need IoT for our house? I would say that I think there are a lot of conditions. There are pros and cons why you want IoT for your house. So something I would say that is, I want to monitor my house. I want to say that my resource usage unknowingly, lot of like tube lights are on, bulbs are on, fans are just moving around. I just wanted to monitor and remotely switch it on and switch it off. So that is some conditions which a lot of people ask us. So the thing is, one of the best device I would say is something called as a Nest device. This is a device which is put up and you can connect all your gadgets to this Nest device. So why I'm talking about this Nest device is, I think I would say that one of the first device which got hacked is this device, which is called as Nest device. I'll talk about that in during my course of the session. But let's just listen what is the importance of this Nest device. The Nest device is called as a smart thermostat. What is a smart thermostat? Is nothing but it's an IoT device which is put up in your house. You can connect your gadgets. It will be controlling the temperature basically of your house. For example, I want to set up the AC. Morning, generally what happens is, when I go for the breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'll be setting up at 23, 24. In the night while sleeping at 10 o'clock, I'll be setting up my AC to 21 and so. So the thing is, it will automatically learn and you need not, later on, you need not control your AC basically. This device will automatically control your device. And the thing is, the advantage with device is it is even connected to your cameras. Once I am out of my house, it will have something called as a geofencing. So when geofencing, it will be triggering my mobile that you are out of the house, but still lights are on. You want me to switch off? Yes, switch off. It will be switching off. So once you are out of the house, it will say the cameras should be triggered so that they're switching on basically. Automatically, everything is done for you. Can you imagine that if these devices are getting hacked, what will happen to your house? So that is what the point of discussion today is. The thing is, so that we should be very careful basically when using these sort of devices. So the thing is, apart from that, one more advantage with this sort of a device is, when I'm coming back to the house, it will say that you're coming back to the house, shall I switch on the lights? So that you will have ambient environment basically. So such a beautiful devices, but only one thing I would always say that is, security should be there in all these devices because it is related to your house and you. The next thing is some of the examples I would carry on. Something called Amazon Echo. I think we all already know. Amazon Echo was already hacked basically previously. I think there were a lot of cases, but now it is I would say that a lot of security patches are coming into Amazon Echo because it is something called as a voice user interface. So we should be very careful while using, because generally they say that we shouldn't share sensitive information when Alexa is on or your Google Assistant is on basically. So a lot of things are there. We'll be discussing that. So this is one example, which is a very famous example because this has added a new flavor into IoT basically. Previously, IoT was only till the cloud. IoT was people were talking that I would do something on the mobile phone, but these devices have made that you need not even press a button. You have to just tell it will do. So that is what people are talking about basically. So so many examples are there for IoT. And if you look at some of the examples for your city basically, so a lot of people ask, why do I want IoT for my city? I would say that a lot of people say that clean and green environment. I think you might have heard about something called smart cities mission in our country. So basically, they are looking at clean and green cities basically. How can clean and green cities come into? Because they say that devices should be smart. How they can be smart is with the help of IoT. That's what they say. So something like garbage bins, they are putting up with IoT devices which will tell what is the level of the garbage bin. Based on that, it will be intimating the garbage collector so that he can come and collect the garbage bins. So many examples are there. So many things are happening basically in the IoT space. So if you look at the industry, a lot of applications are there. I think in the future, I think already Tesla has come out with something called autonomous cars. Apart from autonomous cars, I think these are the devices which are going to come up into the market, which is called V2X. That is vehicle to everything, where vehicles will be talking to each other so that they'll be sharing their position, that is latitude, longitude, speed, direction, and they'll be sharing their information and mitigating from the accidents basically. A lot of information is going to come up. So a lot of applications are there in the market. lot of things will come up into the market basically. So these are the things. If you look at, a lot of fancy things are coming up in IoT, but at the stake of security, we need to look at. So in the environment, if you look at, a lot of devices are coming up. There are something called as array of things which is going to come up basically. Array of things, which a lot of people say that, see, previously what all devices I was talking about one sensor, two sensors. But these are the devices which they say that around 30 sensors can be connected to one device. So what they say that is these sensors can be put up at different junctions basically, where they'll be collecting all your pollution data, the camera data, weather management data, all in a single device basically, and finally sending the data to the cloud. So, so some of the applications, if you look at, and one famous application I would talk about is even in the game of cricket. I think we all love cricket basically in India. So if you look at, even IoT has got into that space also, where they are putting up a small chip called as a batsman's chip, which is put up in the handle of the bat. So with when it's put up in the handle of the bat, it is able to. So with this sort of a technology, they're able to judge how to bat and all those things. So these are some of the applications very much important which have come up into the market. And apart from that, one of the famous application which has come up into the market is your Fitbit data. So the Fitbit data, if you look at, they say that this data was used in code trials basically. So even the sensitive information people are using in the code trials. So how much genuine your data should be. So IoT is playing a role even in the court trial. That's what they say. So even in the criminal trials and all, IoT data from your Fitbit, IoT data from Amazon Echo, IoT data from some other bands was used in the court trials in a lot of developed nations like US and UK. So IoT is playing a major role in all these things basically. So the thing is, now if you look at, when IoT is playing a major role, if you look at the complete IoT proliferation, IoT proliferation is happening everywhere. IoT proliferation is everywhere basically if you look at. So you name a domain, IoT is there. You name a domain, IoT is there. Now the question comes is how to protect them. So what about the security in IoT? If these devices are hacked, if data is manipulated, if wrong firmwares are flashed into them, what will happen to your devices? So that's where the important thing comes, which is called as IoT security basically. So that's where we are sitting here today to discuss on this topic, which is called as IoT security, how important the S component of IoT is. So when I talk about the S component of IoT, the thing is, why should we be concerned about IoT? So that's the question, because after listening to too many applications of mine, yes, surely we should be concerned about IoT. Why we should be concerned about IoT is, a lot of people ask me that, sir, IoT is just a computer, a small computer. I wouldn't say that it's a high-end computer, but it's a small embedded system which is connected to internet. So why can't all the things which you are putting in your computer can be put in IoT? Just like a lot of people ask me that, whatever you are putting in a lot of computers, like the access control, vulnerability management, patching, monitoring, all those, why can't we put in IoT device? Can we put them in IoT devices? No, it's not. It's not easy putting them in IoT devices, because IoT devices are generally constrained devices. When I talk about IoT device, why they are constrained devices? Because they are having low power, low memory, and which are mainly running on batteries basically. So putting all these things, your IoT device will not be able to work, because they are not high computation devices, just like your computers basically. They are low end devices with minimal features basically. So keeping all this is not straightforward. So that is the reason most of the companies don't even look at security for IoT basically. And the thing is, imagine your network with millions of more devices basically. You have put up so many IoT devices in your office. You say that I have a firewall, I have a protected setup and all those things. Someone comes up with a wearable which is not secured basically, but it is connecting to your router. Because of that, your whole office may get hacked basically. Whole office may get disturbed because of that wearable devices. So these are the things. One compromised device will have a complete foothold on the complete network basically. So that is the reason today a lot of people are worried about IoT basically. I think a lot of new components are coming, such as shadow IoT. A lot of new thing terminologies are coming up because of all these problems basically. So the second thing is why we should be concerned about IoT is, the thing is, IoT, as I clearly told you, that it is not straightforward. Just like just like if I protect my computer, that means my complete computer is protected. It doesn't mean that. In IoT, everything is multidisciplinary. Because if you look at IoT devices, if you talk about security in IoT devices, it talks about the hardware, it talks about the software, it talks about the complete online elements basically. It talks about all these things. So that is the worry. You can't say that my hardware is secured, my software is secured, my online elements are secured. You should say that my overall all hardware, software, and online elements are secured. It's not an easy job. So that is a question. A lot of companies don't put security into IoT. And the second thing is the business model makes it difficult to implement good security. Today, see, if you take up IoT device, I think there is a bridge between a lot of IoT devices, like Apple comes up with their own wearables and China comes up with their own wearables basically. So the cost is the difference. Why the cost is difference is Apple is too much of secured. But all these Chinese watches and all which have come up into the market are not really secure. That's why they are bare minimal cost, because the business model is like that they want to sell it for a minimal cost basically. Because of that, they can't put up security and all these components. And apart from that, there is no security culture or training about most of the IoT vendors. Lot of IoT manufacturers never think about security. There is no culture of S component in that. The problem is slowly that awareness is coming up now, but a lot of devices are already there in the market. A lot of devices are already there in the market basically. So the thing is how to retrofit security into that. That is the biggest question. A lot of IoT vendors are facing it now. I want to retrofit security into that now. So that's a big question, because lot of IoT device doesn't even have security updates. At least if I have something called a security update for my IoT device, I'll be able to send some patches so that security is introduced into my IoT device, so that can get retrofitted into the existing device basically. But all the new devices which are coming up, yes, there is awareness onto them, so they are putting up a bare minimal security into that. But the devices which are already there in the market, what about them? So that is the big question which we are having. So keeping that in mind, that in what could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? I think we all should look at the examples which has possibly gone wrong. That is the reason we are sitting here discussing about IoT device security today, and what are the best practices to be followed. The thing is, let me give up one example, which is called as the criminals hacked a fish tank to steal data from a casino. I clearly told you that IoT is a combination of sensors, connectivity, people in the process. Am I right? So what happened is, I think the name is not revealed. Basically, it's a North American casino. They say it's one of the famous casino. The thing is, what happened is that they put up a fish tank, that is nothing but aquarium, what we call, in the lobby of the casino. When they put up a fish tank in the lobby of the casino, that what happened? They put up a small IoT device which is costing I think $10, I think $10 hardly, and they put up a temperature sensor so that the fish tank, the complete ambient environment is there for the fish, so that they can remotely control the temperature of the fish, so that feeding of the fish automatically happens, and ambient environment like oxygen levels and all are proper for the fish and all. They put up a small IoT device. The thing is, the problem there happened was that IoT device was connected to the main router of your casino. When it was connected to the main router of the casino, the hackers got into the and got in because of the temperature sensor, which had a bug in the temperature sensor. So they were able to get into the temperature sensor. From the temperature sensor, they were able to connect to the router. From the router, they were able to connect to the database of the casino. When they were connected to the database of the casino, they understood the patterns of the casino basically. What role will come next? What is the number which is going to come next? So they started putting money on those numbers basically, all the hackers, and they were able to take out any billions of money from that casino. So later they realized that when they found, I think they called some security specialists like Kaspersky and all, they were able to understand that the small sensor has created this problem. Can you imagine a small sensor of a $10 sensor? They lost around billions of dollars basically. So that is what, because that's a casino, hackers were much interested and they got into that. Okay. The next component I would talk about is what could have possibly gone wrong is a pacemakers basically. The pacemakers, I think you all know about the pacemakers. They control the signals of your heart. Am I right? They're small embedded units or IoT device, I would say, that they'll be controlling the signals of your heart. So they have a wireless transmission unit through which you can make the changes basically. You can make the changes. So the wireless communication which was happening to the transmitter and to the pacemaker, the hackers were able to get into that wireless communication, because that wireless communication, it was not encrypted communication basically. It was not protected. It was not secured. The protocols they were using were not having what you say TLS or SSL or anything. So because of that, they were able to get into that communication and they were started changing the values of the pacemaker. So this is one of the hazardous thing which has happened basically. So St. Jude's was the company. St. Jude's was the company which has introduced these pacemakers basically, but they were all hacked because of this. Later, they started using encrypted communication protocols such as TLS and all onto the wireless communication. So this is one of the example I would say. And the third most famous example, which a lot of people talk about, is something called as, I think we all heard about the Jeep car. Am I right? I think a lot of cars are available in India also. I think Jeep had to call back around 1.4 million cars back to their company. The reason behind that is the Jeep car, which was there, it had one MP3 player, I think a dashboard, which is called as a Uconnect. Uconnect was the dashboard. So it had something called as the 4G communication, so that any update comes, the backhaul is the 4G communication. So if Jeep want to update their firmware, so it was sending the data over the 4G basically. So the hackers are nothing but it was proven by some scientists basically who were security researchers. They were able to show that this communication can be hacked. So they hacked that communication, and what they do is they reflash the firmware with their own update. When they reflash the firmware with their own update, what happened? The Jeep car, when the driver was turning right, it was going left. When he was braking, it was accelerating and all this. So because of that small bug, Jeep had to call back around 1 million to 1.4 million cars back because of that. So many examples are there which we can discuss. Lot of examples because of all of this. Because of all of this, IoT has become very prominent. The two security component of IoT today. Okay, so these are one of the famous examples. To go on with the examples, as I clearly told you that today, if you look at the 5 worst IoT breaches in the market, the first thing people talk about is the Mirai botnet. Basically, I think that I'll discuss a bit so that we understand how they were able to get into, because it was a DDoS attack, that is the distributed denial of service attack. The second component, as we have discussed already, it was the St. Jude attack. There were a lot of things, the Jeep hack, the Tencent webcam hack. So many hacks have happened basically. So many hacks have happened if you look at into the market. So if you look at the Mirai, because after Mirai botnet only, people started thinking that, there is something called IoT which can be hacked basically. Because Mirai did it in a big way. It started cracking around 1 million cameras basically. So how did this work is, Mirai, if you look at, I think this was a DDoS attack. This was a distributed denial of service attack. I think denial of service, you all know. We all know that the security triad is something called as confidentiality, integrity, and availability basically. So availability also, if you are able to stop, that means the service is not available to you. That indirectly is nothing but hacking only. Say user wants to use some service, he is not given permission to use that service. Indirectly, you are able to stop the service for him. So that is what these people have done. So what these people have done is, so they have targeted something called as IP cameras. So how this has worked is, so first it will look at the main purpose of Mirai is two things. One is find the IoT devices, find the IoT devices, find the IoT device and attack them. How to attack them is to grow the botnet basically. So they put up the botnet which will grow automatically. So what did they do is they operated in 3 stages. One is called as infect the service, protect itself, and launch attack. How did it infect the service is, first of all, what it did is, so it was scanning for a lot of devices in the IoT area basically. In the network, they were able to scan all the devices. So when they were able to scan all the devices over the internet, they were able to look at the port numbers 22, 23, 5747, which were open. Because 23 we all know it's telnet, 22 we know it is SSH basically. So all this, they found it was open. When they were open, they were able to get connected to that basically. And one more thing is, now you may ask, sir, but IP cameras will be protected. They'll be having passwords. How did they get inside? But the problem is, we all generally what we do is we never change the default settings. A lot of IP camera people, even ISPs, they didn't change the default settings. So we generally have root at 123 or admin at 123. They were the same passwords basically. So these were the passwords. With the brute force attack, they were able to attack all the networks. So they were able to attack around 1 million IP cameras basically because of that. So like that, they were able to increase upon their bots basically. And the first thing what they did is, the second thing, I think, let me get into the thing. So the thing is, first to protect itself. How does the malware work is, for example, I am the owner of the camera. I came to know that there is some problem with my service. What I'll do, I'll immediately shut down my thing. These people, first thing what they did is, they cut the remote connection of the owner basically. The malware first immediately it cut the remote connection of the owner. The service which is there for the owner, it has cut. So owner was not able to do anything. Then it protected itself. Then it started launching the attack basically. So this launch happened in such a way such that it has attacked a lot of departments. Apart from that, most famous, I think today we all watch movies on the OTT environment, which is Netflix. They were able to get into down the Netflix service. They were able to down the Twitter service. They were able to down the Reddit service basically. All these big services they were able to down for 1 2 days. So can you imagine Netflix is down for 1 or 2 days, Twitter is down for 1 or 2 days? How much cost got affected because of that? So that was the thing. Just because the cameras and all were using default passwords, default settings, they were able to get into the network. So that is what Mirai has done so much disasters to the IoT environment basically. So that is the reason. That is the reason a lot of people say that the first thing any developer or any user has to understand is what has happened to these devices prior. Are they secured? How to find out is a lot of issues are already published about these devices. We should just understand that whether any patches already built up for these devices or still it is like the same device basically. So looking into that, as I clearly told you about a lot of IoT devices which are there in the market. If you look at some of the IoT device as Nest Thermostat. Nest Thermostat was very famous because in 2011, Nest was the company which told the world that the future is IoT. They came out with the smart thermostat. Then immediately what Google did is they bought this company immediately for 3.2 billion because they understood that IoT is going to revolutionize the whole world basically. But the problem with this Nest thermostat was the initial version of the Nest thermostat, there was a small bug. What is the small bug is whenever you press a reset button, button for 10 seconds, what it does is it will be looking for some USB multimedia. That means it is looking for some USB device. If I put a USB device with a firmware, that affected firmware basically, what happens? It will run with that firmware, and this thermostat will act according to the hacker. So that is how they were able to do that. And apart from that, this Nest thermostat, the problem is, I think the thing is, it had Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on it. So the Wi-Fi, I think we all know that we generally put up SSID. SSID is generally the name where you are connected to your access point. Like for example, in CDAC, we have CDAC access points. So we connect with the CDAC access point basically. So like that, what they were able to do is through Bluetooth communication, they were able to change the credentials of SSID basically. With that, they were able to hack the Nest device and they were able to reboot the Nest device. When they were able to reboot the Nest device, generally Nest device takes 90 seconds to reboot. So all the cameras which are connected to Nest device, they reboot after 90 seconds. So all the burglars who were there, they were able to enter into the house without getting scanned onto this camera basically. So that was one of the thing which was very famous, Nest thermostat. But I think now patches have come and they are not much vulnerable. But I can't say that they are not hackable. Everything in this world is hackable, but it is a matter of cost and time. That is what. So the next thing is, if you look at some more examples are like Philips smart bulbs and all. Philips smart bulbs and all. I think what happened is all these were using all these. They were having security, but minimal security because of IoT devices. So all the symmetric keys, non-symmetric keys, and all were hard-coded basically. Because even the passwords were hard-coded and all these things. So when you are hard-coding as a developer and all, they were able to easily scan those and able to black out the bulbs basically. So that is what happened in Philips smart home. So, and even if you look at, there is something called insulin pumps also. Insulin pumps, we all know, Johnson and Johnson has generally insulin pumps. So their insulin pumps were hacked basically. So even hackers got into the network and they were able to change the values of the insulin. So this is much dangerous basically because that is going to directly affect the health of the human being. And there were something called as hacking smart guns and rifles. Hacking smart guns and rifles is nowadays the latest rifles, which what they are saying is are coming out with a mobile app. So the gun is connected to the mobile app. On the mobile app, you will be able to communicate with the gun basically, so that you understand where is the shot view, what is the wind velocity, how the bullet should be triggered, and all. You can set up in the mobile app. So what even hackers did is they were able to hack the mobile app and change the settings of the rifle. You yourself will think that you are going to shoot something, but you are shooting something. So these are the most dangerous applications. Just I'm giving you an example because the dangers are pretty high for IoT devices basically. So that is the reason we should understand the previous IoT security issues. So once we understand the previous IoT security issues, I would say that now the question is which way would IoT get attacked? That's what I clearly told you, that this is the complete ecosystem of IoT. So the endpoints are there, that is the end devices, communications are there, gateway is there, cloud is there, communication is there. So I would say that if you look at the complete IoT environment, the attack surface are nothing but the points where IoT device can be attacked or exploited. So the thing is, if you look at IoT device can be attacked at the hardware level, IoT device can be attacked at the firmware level, IoT device can be attacked at the network level or the wireless communication level, and even IoT device can be attacked at the mobile level also, and even the cloud. So all these components, unless until they are secured, I can't say that my IoT device are secured. So you may be asking, sir, these are good for developers. So what about me as a on this cyber Jagrookta? What about us basically as a consumer? What is the best way to protect? So the thing is, I'll just get into that. But one thing always remember, all your IoT device will have a lot of interfaces. I think a lot of interfaces, something like UART interface, like EMCC dump, JTAG, and all these things. Generally, they say that all these should be disabled. When these companies release these products to you, you should first check whether they are disabled or not. If they are not disabled, that means they are prone to hacks because your data can go out. Anyone can connect your device and get the data or the firmware and reflash the firmware basically. So that is what a lot of people say, that we should be very careful when we should first check whether these things are disabled. That is why countries, like a lot of countries, are coming out with a lot of labeling schemes basically. What they do is they put a label on this IoT device so that people are aware. Like just like cyber Jagrookta, people are aware that what is the security people are giving on this device. Even in India, we are trying to come up with these of labels. I think slowly it will come up. CDAC and SQQC are working on that basically. So that even every normal person understands what is the security level of this smartwatch, what is buying, smart TV, what is buying, smart speaker, what is buying, whether any interfaces are enabled, disabled, all that information will be given on the label of the sheet basically. And what is the level of security which is there, whether it's level 1 security, level 2 security, or level 3 security. Because it depends on, for example, level 1 security can be basically for the consumers, level 2 can be for the companies, level 3 can be for the strategic people where a lot of confidential things happen basically. So like that, we are trying to segregate the things which happen basically so that people are aware of what is happening on the IoT device, what is there in the IoT device. Because so that we can guarantee that our data is not going somewhere. Our data is going to where we are intended to go. So that is what we are looking at. So the thing is, if you look at what is the reason, you may be asking, sir, why people are not able to build this? They can directly build this. So the problem is why these security vulnerabilities are there in these devices. First of all, developers are not aware about security. They don't want to put up security because security will add time. Security will add more development time. So release in the market will get delayed. So that is why they don't want to get into that. They want to release immediately into the market so that they hit the market. That is the first reason. The second thing is lack of macro perspective. Lack of macro perspective is, as I clearly told you, that IoT is not about only the device. IoT is about your mobile apps. IoT is about your device. IoT is about the cloud. All the three things should be secured. Then only I say that IoT is secured basically. People don't understand that. That is the problem, lack of macro perspective. And the third thing is supply chain based security issues. Because today, there is nothing called one company develops all. There will be multiple companies developing multiple things. At CDAC, I may be developing the hardware. Some X company may be developing the mobile app. Some X company may be developing the cloud. If one is not secured, all three are gone. So that is the problem. The supply chain based security issues are there in IoT. And apart from that, as developers, we are all crazy that anything is already there. The first thing what we think about is don't reinvent the wheel. What is there, let's use it. So any open source or insecure frameworks we use, we should be very careful when using that. Because of all these reasons, there is IoT security vulnerabilities today in the market. So how to avoid that? How to avoid that is, I think we all know that OWASP has given the top 10 issues basically, which are there in IoT. So the thing is, we all should adhere to them and build up our own IoT devices basically. So, and apart from the developers, we ourselves also should play a role in IoT security. So if you look at what is that role we have to play is, if you look at the thing is, so how to protect our home? A lot of people question me. So I would say that there are a lot of ways you can protect your IoT devices. So if you take up your IoT home device, which you are buying like a smart TV or a smart watch or smart camera, whatever you're buying, the first thing we have to do is change default settings. Because a lot of people, generally what happens, as it comes, we use it. It is not at all correct that you have to use it directly. The first thing is you have to set it up in such a way so that you are changing the default names and the passwords, because all the default names and the passwords are already available on the internet. It hardly takes seconds or minutes time for a hacker to get into your network. So the first thing we should be careful is we have to change the default settings. The second thing what we need to do is we have to manage the passwords. How do we manage the passwords is how do you manage the password is password can't be simple here. Simple as I clearly told you, root at 123 or admin at 123. It should be complicated. I think already a lot of people are said with the multiple characters we have to use, and special characters you have to use. A capital letter should be used. A lot of things are there so that you prevent the things to happen, basically hacking to happen. And the third component I would say that is multi-factor authentication. I think today is the era of multi-factor authentication. It can't be a single factor authentication. Just password will not help. Apart from that, you should check whether your device has something called as an OTP or something which comes to your mobile phone. So that thing should be enabled on your IoT devices. And the fourth thing I would say is control access, basically. Control access is don't make all of your family members or everyone admins, basically. There should be only a single admin who is controlling a lot of things, basically. Then only it's a bit secured. If you give multiple admins, even one loophole will attack the whole system, basically. And the fifth component, which is very much important for us, is update the software. Software should be updated regularly because any security vulnerability is there. Every company releases their updates immediately so that you can patch it, so that your system is secured, basically. So you have to update the software regularly. Then only your system is up to date, basically. And apart from that, check smart device apps, basically, because generally a lot of IoT devices today are controlled with a mobile phone. So apps, you don't give all the privileges to the apps. You should be very careful to give privileges to the apps, basically. Don't give the complete control to the apps. So these are the 6 points I would say that with this you will be able to at least prevent your device from getting attacked, basically. IoT device. The second thing is how to secure routers, because the question is IoT device. Okay, sir, I'll protect because you told me the 6 parameters. I'll be able to protect. What about the routers? All these devices, whatever I'm saying, are getting connected to the routers. If router is not protected, even my device is not protected. So that's the question, basically. So the thing is, what they say is the first thing is you should be aware whenever a new router is coming up into your house. You should be aware that you should be very clear that you should discuss with the ISP and telling that I want separate networks for separate things. All your personal gadgets a separate network, all your smart devices a separate network, all your guest users, anyone is coming as a guest and all, a separate network, basically, so that it avoids a lot of things. And the second thing is what people say is monitor connected devices. What are the devices which are already connected? If it is not in use, please remove them. The first thing you have to see, you have to check in the router what are the devices which are connected or which are not connected. So which are not being used, please remove them first. And apart from that, enable all the security settings. The more secure you are, more protected you are. So don't say that I think let us not keep this firewall here. It is blocking a lot of things and all. So I would say that to protect your home, you have to do all these things, basically. So all the security settings should be, and disable unnecessary features, basically. Anything like UPnP and plug and play, a lot of services will be there on your routers, which support can be there, basically. So all those things you should disable. Simply don't add on the features, basically. If it is security features, please go on. But if it is normal features, whatever are really important for you, only enable those features, basically. So that is the second component. So the next component which comes is how to secure the speakers, basically, because a lot of people have Alexa at their home today. Alexa or Google Assistant and all. So the thing is, because we play around with Alexa and all, but even these devices are dangerous, basically, because a lot of people say that there were a lot of issues with Alexa when initially it was released. Because the thing is, a lot of because of security issues and a lot of sensitive data was going out onto the cloud. So the thing is, what they say is first the limit shared data, basically. What limit shared data is, whenever Alexa is on, don't reveal your passwords or any other sensitive information because it may collect the data and send the data to the cloud. That is very dangerous. And the second thing is, what are the devices which Alexa is connected to? You have to check. And if it is your device or some other device, please have a note of it. And please review the record. Any recordings are happening on that, please check it and delete the recordings. And the fourth component, what they say is control voice related features. Control voice related features is you have to put up the voice recognition on that. That means I am the owner of the device. Only my voice the Alexa should recognize. It shouldn't recognize all the voices in the house. When you start doing that, a lot of information can be going out onto the cloud. So if you are able to do all this, on this occasion, I'm saying Cyber Jagrookta, it will be helpful to save your house from getting attacked basically. So that is what I want to say. And this is what this is a small cartoon which was a very famous cartoon which was put up. Telling that is if your house is attacked, it will look something like this. If I want to enter the house, they say that unless until you pay $100, you can't enter the house. If you say I'm hungry, let me open the fridge. Well, it will say that unless until you pay 100, I'll not open the fridge. So it is up to you guys. If you want to make your home safe, what all precautions we have told you, please do that so that your home doesn't become something a cartoon like this basically. So let me complete my session telling that if you think that internet has changed your life, please think again, because IoT is going to change it all over again. So please be precaution, please be and prevent from these attacks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the interesting section on the IoT security practices. I think we have a query by one Dr. Rohit Pandit. Any other queries from other participants? They are welcome to put their question in the chat box. So there is one question from Dr. Rohit. He says, do the firewall apps like mobile firewall are enough